If you happen to be living in Egypt a few thousand years ago during the times of the pyramids, and you happen to get a migraine headache or a fever, chances are that the doctors would have prescribed a practice that was known as bloodletting. They would have taken a sharp piece of wood, pierced your skin, and let some blood out in the hopes that you would recover. And if you were really lucky, instead of using a piece of wood, they would have used leeches. Fast forward a few thousand years, and if you were living in the time of the ancient Greeks, the same thing would have happened. If you were living in the great Roman Empire, the same thing would have happened. And if you happen to be the first president of the United States, just a few hundred years ago, the same thing would have happened. George Washington got a sore throat. It got progressively worse. Then George Washington told the doctors that the only way to cure him is by letting some blood out. It is said that 5 to 7 pints of blood were drained from George Washington's body, and doctors today say that the most likely cause for George Washington's death was bloodletting. It doesn't make sense in today's medical technology. But why? Why was this practice carried on for thousands of years, even though today we know it's wrong? The answer gives us a lot of answers in our own life, which we'll talk about today. Shri Swami Narayan Bhagwan Jai, Akshar Purushottam Maharaj Jai, Gunatitanand Swami Maharaj Jai, Pramukh Swami Maharaj Jai, Mahanta Swami Maharaj Jai. Bloodletting was a mistake because the model was the mistake. It was believed that the blood itself was the problem, but now we know that it is the disease in the blood that is the problem. Now we know that it's the bacteria and the virus that is in the blood that causes disease. The power of paradigms, the power of models. Have the right model and we can live a better life. Have the wrong model and life can become painful. If you happen to visit Swaminarayan Akshardham in New Delhi, the very first diorama in the exhibition depicts a very powerful model for life. It shows a half-carved man carving himself out of a piece of rock. The man is carving and chipping and chiseling away, trying to shape himself. He has a choice. He can leave himself as he is into a semblance of a man, or he can continue shaping it and smoothing the rough edges so he becomes literally a work of art. He becomes so beautiful that even others can emulate him. The model shows that we are the stone, we are the chisels, and we are the sculptors, needing to shape our own lives into a work of art. If that is to be the model, then the question we must ask is, what are the tools of the trade? What are the chisels and the hammers we can use to shape our own lives into a work of art? The first tool we can use are paradigms. We already talked about the importance of paradigms, but models have a tremendous impact in all of life. For many thousands of years, mankind has been wondering, why do the stars move in the sky the way they do? And based on what was observed, man created a model of the universe based on observation. And the observation was pretty obvious, that we are still, the earth is still, and everything revolves around us. And so for thousands of years, people believed in the earth-centric model of the universe, that we are the center and the stars and the moon and the sun all revolve around us. But regardless of all the models that were created, there were a few stars that could not be explained, and their motions in the sky didn't follow the right model. And no matter how people tried to change the models, those stars could never be explained. Enter Copernicus in the 15th century, a Polish man. He made what is known to be the Copernican revolution of the model of the universe. He said that the best way to explain every single star in the sky is not by having the earth at the center of the universe, by changing the model and having the sun as the center of the universe. Change that model and every single star in the sky can be explained, and even the planets which we know today to be revolving around the sun could also be explained. The model changes everything. If we don't have the right model, then there'll be always some problems. The right model. What is the right model we should have for life? The first paradigm, the first model that Hinduism teaches us to think about is, who am I? Who are we really? Imagine a prince playing the role of a beggar. During the play, he plays his role very nicely. But then after the play, he continues to play the beggar. We would call him ignorant or a fool. You are actually a prince, but why are you continuing to play the role of a beggar in real life? Bhagwan Swami says in the Chaitanyamurti, in his discourses, that the greatest mistake we make in life and the greatest form of ignorance is not really looking at ourselves and our own self in depth. He says that ultimately the seer sees everything in the world, but the seer fails to see himself. And so Hinduism talks about one of the most important paradigms of life. Who are we? Hinduism says that in reality, what appears to be the body as what we are is not really what we are. In reality, we are the Atma, not the body. The body dies and the Atma is immortal. A totally different perspective from what we can observe in life. Why is this so important? Because first of all, it totally changes our perspective on life. If we are the body, then death is the end. But if we are not the body, then we better think about a longer term strategy. In Hinduism, there is a very beautiful story of a king by the name of King Bajan. A very wealthy king. In fact, it is said that 999 camels were used for his kitchen alone. And he was very happy. One day while his caravan was going through the desert, it just so happened that everything stopped. King Bajan got down from his camel and ultimately went to see what the problem was. Why did the caravan stop? He asked his soldiers that what's happened, why is the caravan not moving? The soldier said that, King, Your Highness, it just so happens that a camel has died, and see, you can see the camel right here. King Bajan said to the soldiers that, what is dead? The camel looks to be perfectly fine. It has 4 legs, it has eyes, it has a face. What's dead? Ultimately, the soldiers told the king, that Your Highness, the spirit has left its body and so it is no longer alive. King Bajan said that if that is the course of action for every single being on this earth, then what is the point of me being a king and continuing to live this kind of life? He ultimately realized the ultimate perspective of life, that it's not just about the body, it's about the spirit, who we really are. Secondly, the moment we change this perspective of the physical body is not being ourselves but the Atma being ourselves, it totally levels the playing field of life. Because in reality, the Atma is not rich or poor. The Atma is not black, it's not white, it's not brown, it's not yellow. Everyone is the same. The Atma is not male, it is not female, it is not Brahmin, it is not a Kshatriya, it is not a Vaishya or a Shudra. The Atma is not ugly and nor is it beautiful. Everyone is the same. The playing field becomes totally even for everyone. But even though Hinduism teaches us that we are not the body, we are the Atma. Hinduism also tells us that in reality we should not neglect the body either, because it is a tool to be used to higher ends. It tells us that the body is actually priceless. It is achieved after many, many thousands and millions of births and rebirths. But it also tells us that the body is also temporary, that it can die at any moment, and so it should be used wisely. In Bhuj, India, in 2001, on January the 26th, the Republic Day of India, the people of the city were enjoying life as usual, about to celebrate Republic Day. But just in a matter of 45 seconds, when an earthquake occurred, countless lives were changed forever, just in a matter of 45 seconds. Over 13,000 people died, and hundreds of thousands of people were injured and homeless. Just a few seconds can change all of life. We must take life to be very temporary and sensitive, not waste our body. On December 31st in 2019, a small new virus was detected in a city called Wuhan in China. And the rest is history, which we've all experienced. The whole world was changed, maybe forever, in just a matter of months. Hinduism teaches us that when we realize that we are not the body, that we are really the Atma, it totally changes our perspective of life. It helps us remove procrastination from life, that we need to make sure that we use life wisely and not waste it. The second paradigm that Hinduism helps give us is a perspective of now and eternity. It answers the question of why, which is more important than the what and how of life. Because think about it, science tells us the what and how of life, but not the why of life. We know what the body is. We know about the brain, the heart, and the liver, and the kidneys. We know about the nervous system and the digestive system and all the systems of the body. We all know how the body works, and we know what it is. But more important is, why are we alive? What is the difference between us and a piece of rock? Hinduism tells us the big picture of life and what the purpose of life is by telling us about the 4 basic goals of life. The big perspective of life, that the goals of life are dharma, arth, kam, and moksha. It talks about arth being basically a goal of life, that earning money, arth meaning money, is necessary. Money is not the root of all evil. It is necessary for us to earn money, to live life. It also talks about kam to be a goal of life. Our desires and ambitions are okay to pursue in Hinduism. But it also qualifies arth and kam with the third goal of life, dharma. The previous 2, arth and kam, should be within the confines of dharma, within the confines of limitations and rules and disciplines. But then Hinduism tells us that it's not just about arth and kam and dharma. The 4th goal of life gives us the ultimate perspective of life, which we should not forget. That the real goal of life, the greater goal of life, is at the end, we want to ultimately get moksha, to release ourselves from the cycle of births and deaths to which we've been bound for countless births in the past. It is the ultimate answer to the why of life, why we are alive. Because Hinduism tells us that it is better to think about the long term than just to think about the short term. Pujya Yogiji Maharaj used to tell a very beautiful story about a king. It just so happened that a king once died, and the new king that was put in his place was told that you can rule the kingdom, but there are 2 conditions. That you can only rule the kingdom for 5 years, after which you will have to be exiled into the forest. So the king ruled very nicely for 5 years. And when the 5 years were done and he was about to go into exile into forest, the whole kingdom was crying because the king had to go away into exile in the forest. But the king was actually very happy. Why was he smiling when the whole kingdom was frowning and crying? Because in reality, the king used those 5 years to build his palaces in the forest so that when he goes into exile into the forest, he could enjoy life very nicely in the forest. He thought about the future, not just about the present. Yogiji Maharaj used to tell us that this is the story of life. Think about the big picture of life, that the ultimate goal of life is moksha, not just about this life that we live today. It helps us prioritize our time and tells us what matters the most in life. Many times we live our life on a day-to-day basis, forgetting the big picture. But that big paradigm of life helps us shape our own lives and mold it in a better way. So we learn today that the paradigm is very important. Hinduism tells us the paradigm of the body and the Atma and who we are and why we are. But one important thing that we have to understand, that a paradigm is not enough. The map is not the territory. We need to also move in the territory. So what drives us forward? What gives us the energy?